to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Damian Frassinelli, Certified Master Athletic Administrator and the Director of Athletics at Stafford High School in Stafford Springs, Connecticut. Welcome to the podcast, Damian.
Thank you, Mark. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate it. Good to see your smiling face.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience nationally and internationally where you grew up, where you went to school, your first job, etc.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So I grew up in Stafford Springs, where I currently am the athletic director. Was here for a number of years and then got to be about 18 or so and honestly stepped out to go to college, and it wasn't for me. It didn't take right away. So I went into the business world for a while and then circled back and obviously came back to being an athletic director back here in my hometown. I am one of 6 children. I have 4 older brothers and 1 younger sister. Story I always tell is if they had her first, they would not have wasted their time on the 5 boys because she is outstanding. There's no question. And we'll talk more about the family in a bit. I currently reside here in Stafford Springs with my wife, Kelly, and daughter, Sophia and Olivia. There's a great story about that, which I'll get to as well. My parents still live here. Most of my family is within an hour's radius of Stafford. And great bunch. I mean, we're a tight group, and they're always helpful and there to support. So when I came back to think about education, I attended Southern Connecticut State University for physical education, which turned into a number of different coaching positions, athletic director jobs, and so on. It's really been rewarding being the athletic director here at Stafford High School for the past 19 years, where I'm from, and it's a blue-collar town, and we talk more about feeling good about yourself and your community, and not so much about the state championships and so on. So it's a great community. I love to be here, and my daughter Sophia just graduated from the high school here at Stafford High, so I think for the first time in 7 years, I won't have one of my daughters or either of my daughters in this high school. So when I walk out onto the practice field in the fall, and I'm not sure, what I'm supposed to do. But anyway, it's an honor to be here, an honor to serve on the board, and I await your questions.
Well, let me ask you a couple of follow-ups. The first being the business world. Something soured you on making millions of dollars to take that high-paying AD job, or what?
I think it was the lack of a job that paid millions of dollars soured me on the business world. I said, let me go do something I like with people I'm going to like, and honestly, the student athletes and coaches. And it really, truth be told, a friend of mine called and he said, Damian, he said, I just got the football job at Stafford High. We were classmates. He said, I really need you on staff. He said, because you'll be able to talk to the press and talk to the Board of Education, and I'll run the football aspect of it. And so it worked out, and I came back. And in the minute I came back and started coaching, I really loved the atmosphere and the kids and the community. Really, as just a breath of fresh air from the business world of advertising and spreadsheets and all that stuff. And so I quickly turned it around right then, and went back to school and took care of everything, and eventually landed right here in the spot. I didn't start out to only be here in Stafford, but it's been a godsend ever since.
And let me ask you another follow-up, because I also have 4 brothers, but I also have 4 sisters. And so I'm thinking to myself, it may be more commonplace out here in the West, but there's not a whole lot of people I know that come from large families in the East. And that's probably a generalization that's probably not fair, but that's at least my thoughts on it. And so talk about growing up with, because if you have 5 older brothers, that means you're the one that got beat up on all the time, or 4 older brothers.
So there was some of that. It was I don't know if they called it hazing or anything, but I was the last guy to get new clothes, to get the basketball when we were out, unless I took it myself, whatnot. So so 4 older brothers, and they're all amazing. We're really in a year and a half apart, each of us. My oldest brother Gordon, and then Michael is next. Tony is the middle. My brother John, who's next in line to me, then myself. And then 6 years after me came my sister, our sister. And, great lessons. It's funny. I always talk about that. It's not about you. It's just a mindset of, it's about everyone else. And that's what we always ran it. And I always had 4 older brothers to remind me that it was not about me, whatever we were doing. And I tell 2 stories. One is more funny and one's poignant, if you will. I was about 10 or 11. One of our local coaches in the football program had passed away. He was my older brother's coach, but we all knew him because he was just the head of the organization. And he had passed away, and he had a family and a couple of sons in the program. And I remember when the funeral service came up, I was crying and whining. I said, I never saw a dead body. I can't go. I'm afraid. I don't know what to do. And my oldest brother, he sat me down. I remember it was on the side entrance to the house. And he said, it's not about you. He said, it's about Coach and the family. We've got to go tell his family how much we loved him and how important that, that piece is and how much we're going to miss him. So it's not about you. It's about making sure we support his family. And so there's one of the, it's not about you stories that was so great. And that was my oldest brother. And he was, I say this affectionately. He's about 5'5", but he was a giant all my entire life, and it was always fantastic. And the funny story, I think, is it's our wedding day. My brother John, who's closest in age to me, is my best man. Now John is the good-looking, smart, funny, articulate one that we don't invite all the time because he outshines the rest of us. But nonetheless, we're standing down by the altar. He's standing next to me. We see the doors open in the back. It's a true story. And there's my future wife, Kelly, and her father walking down the aisle. And I'm waiting. He puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, Damian, he said, I'm so proud of you. He said, you're going to, have a great life with Kelly. You're going to have kids, be together forever. And he said, you are blessed. He says, but I just need to tell you one more thing. Today's really not about you either. And it was true. And he laughed, and I had a smile, and he broke the ice a little bit. But great older brother relationship stories. There was never a time where, Damian's not talking to Tony or Mike's mad at like that. Never happened. It just frankly never did. We did our thing, and we were always together. And mostly it was from mom and dad, hey, go outside and play, and dinner will be ready shortly. Or go take your yelling and screaming and go outside. But it was great. Small town living. We always had friends because they were your brothers.
That's excellent. One more follow-up before my next question. I plead ignorance on the geography of the state of Connecticut. I obviously know where Hartford is. So Stafford is in relation to Hartford, and what part of the state? Just give me an idea. I'm sure the people in back east are going, really wake up out there in Utah, but help me with that.
Listen, there are some people in Connecticut that don't know where Stafford Springs, Connecticut is. Trust me, we're pretty small. So we're a rectangle, just like your screen. We would be in the upper right-hand corner, a couple inches in. So if you will, if you're looking at Connecticut, we're in the northeast corner, just on the border of Massachusetts.
Okay.
So if you're looking at Hartford, which is sort of the center, we're about 30 minutes northeast of Hartford. We're right on a major highway that goes right to Boston, an hour and a half. If we go west to New York, it's 2 hours.
And how close to Stores, which is also, I know, in Connecticut?
20 minutes. Yep, just 20
Okay.
minutes out. Yep, and it's, if you will, a little southeast of us.
Okay, and then my question is this. Are you good friends with Danny Hurley, and do you get him to come talk to your kids at school because he was smart enough not to take the Laker job?
Well, no, but I am a bigger Hurley fan than I was before he came to Connecticut. Honestly, Bobby, of course, from Duke and so on.
Right.
Danny came in. It takes a minute to sort of get used to his way on the sideline, but he really cares about the kids that he coaches. He really does. I think, honestly, Mark, his playing days ended somewhat because of some, working on the mental part of it, a little bit. And I think he relates to the kids well and shares that with them because the pressure, the anxiety, all of, of the mental health of the student athlete. I think that's a real big upside with him. And by the way, it might be tonight or the other night. He and Coach Calhoun are sitting down for some big interview, and they're chit-chatting about what it means to be a UConn head coach. But we were sweating a little bit. My friend from Kentucky loved to tease me that we were losing Coach Hurley out west, but thank goodness somebody said, yeah, he didn't want to be told by LeBron how to coach his son.
I would just leave that statement as it is in case LeBron's a listener. We don't want to offend him, but that's he went up in my eyes when he turned down the Lakers because I think he's a great college coach, and I'm not sure those professionals they would have ran him out. He would have made a ton of money, but I'm not sure it was the best move for him coaching wise. So
yeah, and it's true, Mark. It's funny, and he would have. I don't believe he'd ever be hotter. Like he, back-to-back championships, got the world going. He's got everything going. Got a bunch of kids drafted into the pros. You would think if he was going to go and look for money, that was the time. But I think there was something more important to him, and he made the call that his heart told him to make.
All right, Damian, let me ask you a personal question. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
It's funny. I was thinking about that, and truly, and I think it's probably more my, I don't know, looking back than anything else. I don't know if I have a something that I regret terribly or I see as a failure. What I honestly look back on, I wish somehow in trying to do this job, I spent more time with my wife and my kids. I think I did spend a lot of time with my wife and my kids. I think as they get older, and again, like I told you in the beginning, Sophia, my youngest, just graduated in the spring and is going to be going to Southern Connecticut State University, and so she won't be here, and I can't go watch her play field hockey. I can't go watch her, play softball, and so I think I just want more of that. And when Olivia was here and she ran track and played field hockey, I would just like more of that. I think I did as much as I could, but I think sometimes, I'm trying to do this job so well for all the other kids and families that when the kids were in elementary school, this school is only 7 minutes from our home. And some days during the winter, again, they're 7, 8, 9, whatnot. I would say, all right, we got freshman basketball, JV basketball. I'm going to run home at dinner time, sit and have dinner, and then shoot back to the school to make sure the varsity game is going, basketball, whatnot. And I thought that was a good thing. I went home and saw my kids, saw my wife, had dinner, spent an hour, whatever it was, then ran back to work. But what the kids just off the cuff mentioned later on was, Dad, it always made us sad because you always left to go back to work.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, I thought it was good and it seemed good. And it wasn't
Yeah.
like this tragic thing until, through the eyes of babes, right? And I did, so things like that, I probably would just do if I knew what I knew now, then, I would say they're going to be fine at the high school. They're, if something happens to me, they're going to play basketball on Friday night and it's going to be okay. So I think spending more time nights like that, but again, I do think I spent a lot of time, but I think I just personally would like a little more time.
That's some great insight. Thanks for sharing. Let me have you help me because my memory has lost itself since a year ago. So you were at the Section 7 meeting in Hawaii last year, and you had your family with you, correct?
I did not.
It was just you.
It was just me. And that, again, it's so funny. My oldest, who's a junior in college, soon to be a senior in a couple of weeks, reminds me that she did not go to Hawaii with me.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you again. So our youngest was a senior in high school. Sorry, back then junior, and
Yeah.
she was still in school, and it was the beginning of the playoffs for softball, and she frankly couldn't come. And my wife, not that we, let's see, we're helicopter parents or anything. My wife said, no, I'm staying with our 16-year-old back in Connecticut to make sure, she gets to school and she's okay. And I go watch her games. That's just kind of the trade-off, right? But my oldest, who was I think she had either just gotten through her session or was working, whatever it was, she tells me she could have gone. I remember that she was booked and I couldn't bring her. So it just came at a weird time. Section meetings don't always fit everybody's personal schedule, but it was a wonderful time and a beautiful place. So I got plenty of pictures, and I made sure every morning to jump into the ocean. That was
well, and that leads me to my next question. So I want you to speak to our audience about at least the legends for me from Connecticut. Trish, obviously Freddie, and I just finished going on a cruise with Freddie after the NEDC, and Carissa. So speak to our audience about those three great people that have made really a mark for Connecticut, and now you'd be the fourth Mount Rushmore person with them.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to deflect that one, but I appreciate it. Let's start with Trish. And it's funny, I always say this, Trish is the number one person on any list that you could come up with. She's number one on lists that don't even exist yet. She is such a professional. She is so well-rounded. She's gracious. She really does everything well. She has if you will, I think the best position in Connecticut at Glastonbury High. She's got an assistant. She got a great staff. They've got some resources, and she, just eloquently just runs the department like a confident general. I mean, without it being that way. And so now she's serving again on the strategic plan. Again as a sub chair, and she is great. Certainly could have been the overall chair. All four of them could sort of interchange with each other. They're also spectacular. Award of Merit winner just a couple of years ago, and a new AD sitting at a CAD meeting, coming up in a month, could ask her a question, and she would spend as much time as necessary to answer that question. You wouldn't know she was this big shot, soon to be Hall of Famer the minute she steps down from her position. She is such a great person and great professional athletic administrator. It's great to just be in the same conversation with Trish.
Let me echo that, because I got to know, I met Trish the day I went off the board. It was the day that she came on the board, and then got to know her really well. she was the president when I was fortunate enough to be one of the committee chairs. So this would have been probably 10 years ago.
Yep.
And so that she is everything you said. And so thanks for sharing that. But share some more about Freddie and Carissa.
So Freddie, you, I know, will appreciate this. I might have told you this before. A few years ago, I was giving a speech at the CAD conference. And for those that didn't know him, I said, Fred is the executive director of Connecticut, former AD, is passionate, but he has a way about him. He is the type of gentleman who puts in a thumbtack with a sledgehammer because it has a fine point, but he is going to crush it home. But I owe him basically everything, Hutch. He called me. I'm telling you, I remember the phone call. I was sitting at my desk, and it was early on, and he said, Damian, this is Fred Balsamo from CAD. We'd like you to serve on our CAD board. And he went on to say a few things, and I'm sort of in awe, right? I'm a little intimidated. And he said, so what do you think? And I said, sir, here's what I think. When a person like you calls an AD who's new like me, I just say yes and ask when to show up. That's it. And I did from that moment on. And he has put me in positions that I maybe didn't understand at the moment why it was important, but it was helpful in my career. And I was, dedicated to doing a good job because Fred Balsamo trusted me enough to be in a position. I better do a great job. And so I did. But I'll tell you two other short ones, and a little personal, some of them. So when I was on the board, my first year, he said, Damon, you have to put your name in to be president. And I said, Fred, I'm not going to do that because the first criteria is to write that letter that says why you want to be the president of the NIAAA. I said, Fred, I don't talk like that. If there's a different process, I'll be happy. But I don't say I would like to do this because I have 4 older brothers that say, nope, we'll tell you when it's your turn.
Yeah.
So I just don't talk like that, right? And so when I didn't submit my name, he called me, and I'll be straight honest. He said, Damian, you disappointed me, and you disappointed a lot of people because we needed you to put your name in, and you should have done that. And he was sincere about it. But when I did run later, I suppose later we should explain this story. When I ran against Becky the year later and lost or was not selected when she was selected, he wrote me the most beautiful email. You would cry your eyes out if you read it. So you're going to get the pure thoughts of Fred Balsamo, whether it's, good for you or it's good for you to hear. But either way, what he tells you is from the heart. He is a bulldog, but a teddy bear all at the same time. You just got to know him. He has done such great things for Connecticut. I mean, he has created this executive director position for Connecticut. Has done it himself the entire time for next to no stipend, all for the benefit of all the ADs. He works every day to make sure the job of the athletic director in Connecticut doesn't get bombarded with legislation, with state association mandates. He works hard for the ADs every day. He may be loud about it, but he is on our side.
And then finally, Carissa.
So it's funny, Hutch. Carissa, prior to her leaving, it might have been 2 years before that, they were looking for an assistant executive director. I think it was associate executive director at the state association with her. And she called me in and she said, Damon, she said, I think this would be great. We work well together. I would like to, ask you if you'd consider it. And she called me on the phone and asked that. And I said, I'm coming to see you, which is about an hour out. So I drove there and I said, Carissa, I said, I greatly appreciate it. I got great respect for you and what you do and how you do it. But my daughters are literally coming into my building. I can't leave. I have to, be there for them for the next 7 years, which literally just ended. And I said, and I'm sorry, but if you ever need anything from me. And she was so gracious and appreciative that I drove there to tell her the story and that I was going to look after my girls. She, even after that, she appreciated it, was still, when she left to go to the national, she'd still call me up or text or ask questions or say, Damian, can you help me here? Or can I, be of service to you here? And so when I was on the board, she had asked me, no, she said, Damian, she said, this is going to be great. And, us working together for the conference, the 50-50 split, and the relationship, she was more happy for me, really, than anybody. She's still a big supporter of mine. And she says so sometimes at the national conference when she has the mic. But she is, she's she is on the Mount Rushmore as well. She's a great person. She's a great supporter. She cares about kids, and she sees when change needs to be made and is not afraid to say it or to make change. So I still have great respect for her, and hopefully she'll stay in that position for a while, and I can see if I can help her out a little bit more if she ever needs anything from me. But she's another standout.
Great stories. Thanks so much for sharing about those three people. Let's have you talk to our audience about the unique opportunity you had to serve as NIAAA president, and then maybe share a couple of stories, because as you and I know, each board is a little bit different. So I'll turn the mic over to you.
Sure. So I'll give that little bit of background probably that's necessary for the audience to know. So when I originally was running for the at-large position from Section 1, we were going up against Section 6, and it was awkward for all of us. Past the deadline, I think it was October, the candidate from Section 6 had resigned and gone to work at a university. So now there was no candidate. Now, it was the first dual election. It used to be, three candidates running for one position. This was two different elections. Jamie Sheets ran on one side against the gentleman, I think, from Maryland.
From Maryland, yep.
Yep. And I was running against, at the time, a woman from Oklahoma. And so it was the first time it was a dual vote. So
it was two votes at the same conference, right?
That's right. And so the old way, if one candidate dropped out, you'd still have two people running against each other. But now, so the bylaws had to change once this happened, and it was like, hey, we can't have just this person, run unopposed. So I ran unopposed.
Acclamation.
So, and I'll be honest with you, Hutch, I remember Phil called me and Fred, and I said, I understand what the pop manual says, that, it's too late because it's past October and all these things need to be in. I said, but I can't run unopposed like that. That's not fair. Of course, Fred said, well, it's not your position to give up. It's Section 1's representative, which he's right.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I said, Fred, this is uncomfortable. He said, too bad, you have to do it. And I said, fine. So when I gave that's the other thing. I said, nobody wants to hear a speech from a person that basically has already won the election, because nobody's on the other side.
I remember.
I'm like, that's terrible. So I mentioned that during, it was an awkward position. So anyway, so here I am. I'm now on the board. Actually, real quick, funny story. A friend of mine who was sitting in the audience, there was a woman next to her. And in my quick speech, I said, this is an awkward position, but I tell you, when I assume the position on the board, I promise you I will work hard for all of you. And the woman who was sitting next to my friend, she said, looked up and said, well, that's kind of arrogant of him. He didn't even win the election. And she's like, well, he kind of did. But anyway, so here I am. So now I'm on the board. And I told you I didn't run the first year for president, submit my name for president. And then in the second year, I submit my name and I'm not selected for president. So here I am. I ran unopposed. I'm on the board. I ran for president. Eventually I am, because Becky had stepped down and she would have been a fantastic president. And so I look at it like, you can, in the world of faith and everything else, you can hope that you are here or that the decision is here. But guess what? There is a plan for you. You are going to end up where you're supposed to, regardless of what you do during the course of that. Like right? And because I put in, I didn't put in, here I am. It must be for a reason. And I'll tell you, when I was dejected from that, again, I felt bad for my kids and people that supported me really over anybody else. Rich Barton, just outside of the, I think it was the former board reception, because we found out earlier that day, he put his arm around me and he said, Damian, he said, you are a great leader. Your turn, your turn to serve will come. We will have things for you. You just wait and have faith. And then 6 months later, when Becky had to resign and be an associate executive director alongside of Rich Barton, and I'm thinking that guy knows a lot of stuff, boy. That's pretty good faith. And so again, so Hutch, in my world, it was easier for me because basically I was then asked, Damian, can you step in for Becky because she can't serve, and can you be, serve as the president for the rest of the year? So instead of me saying me, which is just my version, they asked me. It was easier. So then it was just make sure to, care. What I always say about the NIAAA, it's not always about what the NIAAA does. They do a lot, but it's how they do it and why they do it. It is for people, and they always think about the person as an individual and as a collective unit of the group. And they, across the board and the PDA team and the executive directors, they're all doing things for people, not to them. They're not sitting voting in things for themselves. We're trying to give grants. We're trying to give endowment money, support, scholarships, like those things. It's always a focus on everybody else. And I wanted to make sure of that when I was able to speak and people would listen. It's been such a great opportunity, the most rewarding thing in my professional career, no question about it. Very humbling. You're sitting around a table, some 20 of really the best, the high flyers from around the country. And you feel a heavy responsibility to make sure the meetings run appropriately. I can't let Mark, not hear something or be dragged down because somebody's dominating the meeting or we're off topic or we're goofing around. Like, no, it's not fair to Mark Hunter, who's sitting on this board. I have to make sure that this is a well-run meeting. Everyone is heard. Everyone can hear, can contribute, feel valued, know they're valued. All those things are important. And then you say, we're also responsible for 15,000 people around the country. So we've got to do it right. And we always have to think of the membership whenever we sit down at the table for the NIAAA board, because we're only there to serve the membership.
That's well said. Let me ask you quickly, when I say the most recent, by the time this airs, it will be 10 months ago. But the most recent conference in Orlando, the conference before that in Nashville, which was Nashville the largest, Orlando the second largest. Just share your thoughts with our audience about those last two conferences and really the big change after COVID.
So it was really great getting back, really to in person, if you will. And a quick shout out, if you will. Because when Lannis was president, he didn't get the conference. That means Lisa Langston, who was president next, didn't see how a conference was run. And then Mike McGurk did his best to follow what Lisa did. So there were, 2 or 3. It's like our job. We had to figure it out, right? Something goes wrong, you got to figure it out. You're still going to play. So kudos to those two. And I watched them intently to see what they did and how they did it. So they did great things, the two of them. And so I'll say that between the last two conferences, we've had over 1,500 first-time attendees between the both. I think in Nashville, it was more near over 900, and it was over 500 in Orlando of first-time conference attendees. And so, we're doing things right. You don't get big numbers like that to come to the conference. And every year, sometimes because of location, right? There's a bump in Nashville because it's Nashville. It's great. We're only slightly under that number when we went to Orlando. I think Austin will be big because it's Austin and it's new. We haven't been there. I think it'll be great, but it is so inviting. And the conference advisory committee reads the eval. So when you finish your conference and you fill out the eval and it says, would you like to serve as a moderator, or what would you like to see as a gift, or who would you like to hear as a speaker, or where would you like to go? Conference advisory, I sat on it years ago. We read that and we say, hey, we got 80% that said they'd like to go to warmer climate, or they'd like a travel bag instead of a garment, whatever it is, to try to give those that respond their due because they took time to go to the conference and fill out the conference evaluation. But the amount of leadership training courses that we provide in the national conference is amazing. It is truly amazing. They are, stacked most every day. There's gonna be more on Friday than there ever has been, because the leadership training courses are just almost jam-packed, each of them, at every national conference. You got national faculty teaching, so the best of the best, the workshops, people volunteer their time to go to leadership, to instruct for leadership training, and to give a lesson, if you will, at the workshops. I mean, there is so much of the volunteer army that, that Phil Risen talks about, that, it is really the greatest professional development, networking time that you can find really anywhere. It's concentrated. It's wide ranging because you can pick from, I want to go to a workshop that discusses how to write a better handbook, or to go to the law and review, or to go to, how to recruit more female athletes, whatever it is, right? There's so much to choose from.
Yeah, that is that is so well said. I certainly can't add to that. So we'll finish with a couple of items. The first, Damian, is you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new AD, and they need to follow Damian's suggestions in order to become a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
One would be, do not strive for perfection and 100% attendance at every single event on campus. No one can do that, right? You might hear from, the boys soccer parents, oh, you're at more girls soccer games than ours. Well, you probably have a field hockey game going on, and you got a cross country meet. You can't go to all these things. So if you want to be, get credibility, if you will, you have to go to things, but you do not have to go to all the things, right? You have to go and show the kids that you support them. And the parents, if they see that, I'm not always one that worries too much about the parents, to be honest with you. Probably what I should work on. All I care about is the kids, their experience. Did we hire the best coach that we had in the candidate pool? Did we give them our handbook and go through all the rules and regulations so we know that they're speaking to the kids appropriately? They've got a great game plan. They're skilled and knowledgeable in the rules and regulations of the sport. Did we surround them with a good booster club and so on? And are we there to say, hey, I saw you, give that great pass during that soccer game yesterday. You know what? That was fantastic. And a kid would light up the next day. You're the AD in the building. You are a big image, person, figure in the building, whether you think you are or not. And some junior kid is like, hey, Mr. Frez came to the game and he told me I did great. That will make their day. And you're sincerely there to watch them in the thing that they love the most, and that's athletics. They're being more themselves than they are maybe in the classroom. They're doing what they love. They're accomplishing things that they had put in so much work for. So go and reward them with your attention and be there when you are there. Don't be on your phone. Don't be having conversations out that, I tell parents, I'm here to watch your kid. All right, so let's watch them together. And you do that. So one thing again, don't strive for perfection because things fall through the cracks uh, at all times, whether a bus broke down or this, that, it's going to be okay. But make sure that you are detailed and you have your reminders and you don't judge yourself or grade yourself on, did I do everything perfectly today? That's asking way too much. Just do your best. The second piece, although that might have sounded like 10 things, it was only one. The second piece, surround yourself with good people and rely on them and lean on them and also reach out to them. I always say, reach out to others, not only to ask if you can help them, but ask if they can help you. Sometimes, you know how it is. You just somebody needs to vent or, if you will, proof something. I used to have a gentleman across town, worked at another school, and I would have an email from an angry parent and I'd have a response, and I was hot and I was thinking, I'm not taking this from this person anymore. I'm going to write this email. I would send it to my buddy Jim. Jim, tell me, where do I need to sort of back off here a little bit? Give me a 10-second breather. And he'd go through and he'd say, yeah, Damian, you're on point here, but I don't know if you needed that last sentence. That really kind of stuck a jab in there. And it was good. And I'd say, you know what, you're right. I appreciate that. But if I didn't have him as a good resource to bounce an idea off of, maybe I would have gotten a little bit of trouble. Not so much, really in trouble, but, you call people and say, hey, I'm working on this project. We've got a dedication ceremony to a coach. I know you all did it, last year. Can you tell me what you all did? And then you're just bouncing ideas off and sharing ideas because we're not supposed to know everything. And you know how it is. It's not like you steal ideas. You're just sharing ideas.
Absolutely.
Right? I'm not sure I have to come up with every idea, but I know I can call someone and say, hey, you guys did something similar and go from that. So have a good group around you and take a walk once in a while, right? Maybe it's golf. Maybe it's just, meet for lunch, whatever it might be. You go to the gym before you head to work, whatever it is, right? Get a little bit of stress relief, mental health checkup. We keep an eye on everybody. We do. All the parents, all the kids, the community, the officials. Who's keeping an eye on those that are keeping an eye on everybody else, right? You got to call Mark Hunter and say, Mark, are you okay? You're covering everybody in Utah. Tell me, how, are you doing okay? Spending time with the family? Tell me about your grandkids. I could certainly see your social media feed and see all, all those great things. But you know what? It's still nice to call someone up and check on them and make sure they're okay and tell them you're thinking about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Let's finish with this. Damian, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Again, you're a Hall of Famer, so you know what, you've got this covered. But I would say, and I know it's not about anybody else, but I would say, what were my thoughts on Phil Risen in his first full year as executive director? Now, I say that a little tongue in cheek.
You see that tongue in cheek, so share those thoughts with us.
And it's funny. So when you're an officer, you travel to section meetings with someone from the office, and it's either the executive director or one of the associate executive directors, and they travel to each section meeting. Well, in my first year, I signed up to go wherever Phil Risen was going, because in his first full year as executive director, I just wanted to sort of watch him in action. And he is amazing. And you know that. He jokingly says, it's Final Four intensity, baby, right? Because he brings it. And right. And if you sit and listen to one of his presentations, he is passionate. He is a good man. He loves the NIAAA, loves his family. He loves the people around him. He's got your back. You could call anybody who's a member anywhere around the country could call him up and ask him for something, and he will either do it himself, he'd call someone local to get it done, he would take care of you, and then he would circle back later and say, hey, that thing you called me about, I sent you some people, I did, tell me how you are. Did it work out? He is, he's one of the best of the best. I love that man, there's no question. And he is doing a great job. He's got that humble, Phil Rising, get out of your humble way, because you are as great as we all think you are. And it was fun being with him for the last couple of years. It's funny. I'm rolling off. I've been on the board 5 years, which seemed to go by in a blink. And I don't regret 1 minute of it. Spending time with him, the other board members. So talking about, you wanted a couple of stories. Again, when you go to the board meetings, every February for a number of days, and every July, we go to dinner, have an outing. Some of those were the best times. Mini golf, or at the Prairie, right at the kids, right, and we had a great time at the Prairie. I think maybe during your time it was like 150 degrees. You might have melted, but when I was there, it was a great atmosphere, and we socialized. There was one time Becky, she might have had the beverages in her car and got a flat tire on the way.
To Tons of Tires. Yes, I heard about that.
And they said, we'll be back for Becky. Just make sure you send the beverages along with the first Uber. But there were some great funny stories. Going to their houses, going to Mike Blackburn's house, and his wife has on a blackboard in colored chalk, NIAAA family welcome to the Blackburns' home. I mean, that's special. They open their home, they cook for 30. So going to Phil's house, we went to Mossbrucker's house, Mike Mossbrucker's house, and he couldn't have been more thankful that we all came to his house. And I'm thinking, Mike, you clean the pool and you cook for 35 people, and now you got to clean up. We're thank you. But you meet such great people, and I'll tell you this. Really, and there were so many great moments in 5 years. The best hour of my 5 years, I was sitting on Phil's screened-in porch room, and I didn't say a word for an hour. I sat with Phil and Mike Blackburn and Bruce Whitehead. Wow. And I just listened to them like, this is amazing. I felt like a little kid, right, with the uncles and so on. And the things they talked about and the stories they told were just amazing. It really was just one of the most impactful times that I spent with the NIAAA, and there were so many.
And on that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Damian Frassinelli, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, the Director of Athletics at Stafford High School in Stafford Springs, Connecticut. Damian, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It's been great. I appreciate it.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.